Okay. All right, everyone. I call this meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. Ryan, will you please send around the attendance sheet? Thank you very much. All right, we do not currently have the minutes from last meeting, so we will table the approval of those minutes until our next meeting. And then we will move into the approval of the agenda. So are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yeah, can I table my final change?
Sure.
Hello. Can you slash CSC's officer reports? it's 3 a.m. I don't need it.
It's 3 a.m.
Yeah, I'm in London.
It's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
It's fine.
Absolutely. I just got it off during your business.
It doesn't actually, if it's in my officer member report, but it doesn't. So my chief of finance is here to do the presentation.
Sure.
But like, I don't know where it is on the.
Well, we can put it in your officer member report. Is that
put it in
okay?
the officer member report.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And then if we need to, if she needs to go earlier, then we can just move your officer member report till earlier.
Yeah, I told her I just text her to come up when she's ready, or when I'm ready for her.
Great. Okay, so we'll put that under your report.
Okay.
Any other amendments to the agenda? Let me just wait for our virtual friends. So as of now, I have strike FFC report, CFC report, and the SWC bylaw change, and add a discussion.
Please strike me, Claire.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Wait, Claire, did you strike?
Ella? Yes.
Genrock 2.
We're striking Genrock 2. Last call for changes. Okay, George, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion.
Thank you. For a second. Jamie? Move into the roll call beginning with IVP.
Yes.
IVP?
Yes.
Genrock 2?
Yes.
CSD?
Yes.
Staff?
Yes.
SWC?
Yes.
7-0, the motion passes and the agenda is approved as amended. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move to the last one. Actually, we do have another member joining us at our council meeting today. Her name is Michelle Moyer. She is a representative of ASUCLA and is an attorney that can help us with any cases regarding election code or any other legal violations. So, Michelle, would you like to take a couple minutes, introduce yourself, tell us about what you do and how you can serve as a resource?
Next, but again, my name is Michelle Moyer. I'm the Director of Business Affairs and Compliance for ASUCLA. And I've been here with the organization for about 2.5 years. And my purpose in being here tonight is really just to know you, introduce myself to you, let you know that I'm available as a resource for you if you need it in any way, shape, or form. And I'm familiarizing myself with what you do and how you do it. So thank you so much for it. Hello.
Yeah, so Michelle, feel free to jump into any point during our discussion if there's anything you want to add or ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Great. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on into public comment. As a reminder, there are 3 rounds of public comment. The first is no audio, no video. The second is audio, no video. And the third is both audio and video. So, first and foremost, a reminder, each public commenter does get 2 minutes, and I will go ahead and pound the gavel when there are 10 seconds left, and public comment is restricted to members of the Undergraduate Student Association. That's where we set for audio. Thank you so much. Audio, no video. And our last round is both audio and video. Go for it.
All right, good evening, council. Good to see some familiar, energetic faces. I was told that summer meetings have kind of been like a drag along, so I thought I'd get off work and bring some excitement today. So I applied to be election board chair for the office of the president. I was not appointed, but I am here to speak on behalf of what I believe the election board chair and office of the president should speak on. So first and foremost, I wrote it down, so I have 2 minutes. I'm not here to oppose the mayor's appointment, so definitely do with your vote as you will. But I am here to focus the office of the president and the election board on essential things that I believe should be implemented next year going forward. And also, I'd like to take the time to also appreciate the office of the president for appointing a person of color to the role that hasn't been seen in the years I've been here at UCLA in my 4 years. So first, the new ideals that were posed on my election board interview that were passed on. First, implementing annual traditions during election season to build campus solidarity and unity. Also, I'm going to run through these very fast. We have 30 seconds probably. Okay, implementing a public rubric for election sanctions using the hashtags not for election promotions, but rather than tracking sanctions, allowing council to 2/3 overrule a sanction of the complainant if the complainant feels that their sanction was unfounded, having a transition team after elections, electing commissioners week 5 instead, together with executive board, and making executive board elected week 8, reducing online voting to 2 days so we can have lower anxiety around candidates in their election process. Also implementing party conventions to do away with the normal endorsement process, which truly is a second debate in implementing party conventions instead of endorsements. Also setting the guidelines and procedures so debates are actually legitimate and not just a question and answer between moderators and candidates. Also initializing an initiative called Healing History, taking the time to reflect on past elections and seeing the troublesome times that we have had with that, and looking forward to build a healing and better history with our campus community. Also having Meet the Candidates be natural and not so formal, and have it be more of an informal setting, maybe like a barbecue, picnic, or kickback of sorts. 10 seconds. Okay, just some awesome traditions that I think that we could move forward with is implementing an inaugural address during the election process, also for the president. Having night luminaries, a good way to build campus unity before and after elections, and also having food in the election board office after elections because everyone's out there hungry. Okay.
Thank you, Justin. Would you mind emailing me all of those things? I have notes from your interview, but I don't have all of those specific ones that you talked about. So. Okay, wonderful, great.
Claire.
Council. I also will share everybody on the document from last meeting. I didn't send it to you all yet, but I will do that after tonight. We need the Facebook link, Bella?
Yeah, to post on the IVP for people to watch. Should be on.
Yeah, we need the YouTube link, I think.
You couldn't get it from the Hangout?
You can't do it. You have to do it via the YouTube link, or else people will accidentally join the Hangout via the Google link.
Hold on 1 second, Jessica.
Oh, there we go. Let's see. Yeah, this works.
Alrighty. And seeing as there's no more public comment, we will go ahead and end at 7:16 PM. Okay. So that takes us into appointments. We have one appointment tonight, and we'll proceed very similarly to the last few rounds of appointments. Obviously, you all know what election board chair does, but I'll go ahead and read the appointment description just for consistency's sake. Then Mayor will have a 1-minute opening. We'll open it up for Q&A, a 1-minute closing, discussion, and then we'll vote, and he needs a majority for confirmation. And just a reminder again that all appointments made over the summer for the bylaws are interim appointments, and so we will have to pass some sort of action or consent item when we return in the fall to reapprove those appointments. Wonderful. So again, I know this is shared knowledge for most of you, but I'm going to go ahead and read the description. It is short. Openings, 1 position, 1-year term. Chairs the election board and nominates and supervises members of the election board executive committee. Is responsible to USAC for the administration of all aspects of USAC elections. Makes any necessary revisions to election code. Extensive time commitment before and during regular spring election. The chairperson will also oversee any special elections that occur during their tenure, and it is a stipend position, as are the other directors on election board. And just before we move in again, as we will be discussing elections for the next however long, remember that elections are a sensitive topic, can bring up emotions, tensions for many, if not all of us. So please be intentional in your discussions of elections. Let's not necessarily bring up specific pointed statements or instances, and rather focus on improving next year's election rather than reliving this year's. With that, Mayor, whenever you're ready, if you would like to get into your opening. Thank you for being here, listener.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. I wrote my opening statement down, and if you don't mind, I'll read it. My name is Ben Burchin. I'm a fourth-year transfer student studying political science with the intention of going to law school and pursuing a legal career. I transferred to UCLA last year from Los Angeles Pierce Community College, and during my undergraduate studies, I have engaged in multiple leadership activities. During my freshman year, I was elected the president of the philosophy club. During my tenure as president, the philosophy club became the most popular club on campus, as membership grew from nearly 5 members to 147 members. During my sophomore year, I was elected to be the treasurer of the Associate Student Organization at Pierce College and served as the chair of the Finance and Budget Committees. During the same year, I also chaired the Rules Committee of the Associate Student Organization and chaired the Constitutional Reform Committee, where I helped successfully reform the student body constitution and bylaws. After transferring to UCLA, I served as the vice chair of the USAC election board, where I played a critical role in management, reforming spending limits, implementing candidate reimbursements, and online signboard allocation. I would like to be election board chair not only because I am passionate about student governance, but also because I see it as a perfect opportunity to serve the student body by upholding the election code, the constitution, and the bylaws. As chair, I plan to use my analytical and leadership skills to positively contribute to the goal of a fair and free election while upholding absolute impartiality and integrity. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we will move into Q&A from here. Anybody have any questions to start us off?
We're trying to looking for the online people.
I'll call on you folks.
Okay.
We have
Yeah,
online.
camera, and then if you can see them pop up when they talk.
Jamie.
How would you rank last year's election board on transparency and why?
I would just with the metric ranking.
Like 1 to 10, and then why that number? Yeah.
I would rank it a 5, a flat out 5, because we try to be more transparent by having the expenditure reports online. We made it as soon as possible, and our finance director worked really hard to make that possible. The reason why I won't give it the other 5 is because there's still a lot of room for improvement. As you all know, we're really dealing with a very broken election code that needs to be for any real change to happen. And I think I'm prepared to help that reform go through, so that we can see more transparency on the part of these representative bodies. I mean, at the end of the day, we represent the students, and any role representation and transparency has to be 100%. And I do have goals that I do talk about how I can increase transparency. One idea that I have is making everything online, and also making the expenditure reports instant and online, through instant online validation processes, like an online community Excel sheet that we could have to keep everyone's expenditures on track, and so that the group would have it immediately rather than waiting for like a weekend to receive it. So those are some ideas that I have. Of course, transparency starts with the people that are on board. And I hope to, if I get the appointment, I hope to appoint people who are competent and capable of being stewards of democracy properly.
As a follow-up question, since you're saying that you're not giving the other like 5 points on a scale, like is there any like specific instances or something like you can think of that like maybe you not the 5? Yeah.
Certainly, we try to be transparent, but our attempts are what gives us that 5, I think, and the lack and our fault part is what takes away that 5, because we were very slow to release the expenditure reports, had a lot of problems in terms of for example, guidelines for sanctions. I mean, it's like as if no one really knows how we're issuing sanctions. There isn't a clear rubric on how what we're looking for the allegations, and I think that producing these very important steps, we could actually give the electorate and council how our decisions are made, the guidelines for our decisions, and what we're looking for in complaints and in events that we carry out.
I have a question. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me.
Go for it.
Okay. So, sorry, I just wrote it down so it made sense. So, I want to respect the fact that you are transfer and understand that it's harder to get positions within student government, or that like opportunities are limited to those who do not like access student government in some way beforehand. But do you think there may be some potential issues regarding impartiality or slight bias? That's not to be comment on your character, but more so just by virtue of being involved previously. Do you think that can affect the way in which you proceed to like do the job as election board in the future, even though it does give institutional knowledge? Does it trade off, or is one worse than the other? Does that make sense? I don't even know if you can hear me. I'm sorry.
You're asking about partiality, right? How I will uphold that?
Say that again. Sorry.
So as previous vice chair, how based on my experience, I would continue to uphold impartiality.
Yeah, just because. Yeah, that's the question.
Well, I mean, in my previous experience, I tried to uphold impartiality at that time. I really think impartiality is the most critical step in government. You can't have student government, you can't have any representative if they're not beyond their mere opinions. Right, so I take impartiality to be a part of trust and part of institutions, and without that knowledge, without that ability to think that our student members or council members are invested to put the important organization out their own opinions, you never have a good and sound student body. And I can tell you that in my position as vice chair, I always put the consideration on the election code, on the constitutional violence. Any decision that I made was based on the constitution, was based on the election code. That is one of the best ways to uphold impartiality, because we all know we're susceptible to biases and being partial. But one has to step back for a moment and say, what are we doing here? What are we really serving? Who is the constituency that we're serving? And for me, I know my constituency is the students, and the students have elected the council. The council has approved the constitution and the election code, and my duty is the election code beyond any other thing.
Mayor, would you mind speaking a little louder and a little slower?
Sorry.
Our electronic friends are asking us.
Yeah.
Sorry, and we can move the microphone maybe not much.
Should I repeat that?
No, it's okay. Just moving forward, a little louder and a little slower.
And turn it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I could elaborate on that impartiality. I mean, the election board chair is there are explicit duties, the administration of the election, the administration of the events, putting in the directors and all those very explicit and enumerated duties in the Constitution and in the election code. There's also a symbolic duty to the election, board and the election board chair. I mean, that symbolic duty is, of course, the guarantee of an authentic democratic election at UCLA universities, right? That symbolism, that importance, one has to be able to perceive that and understand that and appreciate that in order to do this role. And I feel like I do appreciate that, and I do understand that. And I do understand the importance of that. You know, some students, yesterday I had a meeting with the RC, and they brought up a really good point. They said some students, international students, this is the only vote they have. This is the only taste of democracy that they get. And that, with that knowledge, me knowing that, I have a very awesome duty to carry out and make sure that democracy is delivered as expediently as possible.
How would you identify and then also address workplace discrimination on election board? In your answer, please specifically address the issue of sexism.
Sure, yeah. Sexism talking was a big problem on a previous election board. And how I would address it is being more active and vocal on the board. One of the things that I regret today is that I didn't engage in active, I didn't put things in public and said this is wrong. I instead took this other approach. I told them separately that you shouldn't be doing this wrong. I regret that separately, but on a, not a public basis, because I didn't feel as if the victim in that situation or anybody else felt comfortable with me bringing those topics up. And also because I was a newcomer and I didn't really know how to, handle those kinds of situations. Now that I look back on that in hindsight, I should have been more active. I should have addressed it when that issue came up. I don't accept for those kinds of situations, whether in my own character, or in my own behavior, or the members of people on my board. And I would, as election board chair, publicly to anyone on my board who engages in that kind of disrespect and that kind of behavior, I would call them out publicly and ensure that they are reprimanded and the appropriate action is taken against them. Now, I'm not afraid of referring to the council for removal from office if that's the case.
So the first part of the question, for how you identify it, because I think one of the problems was that people didn't even know how to define misogyny or give examples of what that looks like. So how would you identify workplace discrimination?
Well, I can tell you an example of what I consider misogyny. For example, when I was talking to a group of people only dressed as a male, that is a type of misogyny, sexism. That I accept of, I will look for amongst the board members, I will listen to members of my board if that problem does come up, and I will certainly make sure they're addressed. I will never put a blind eye on that kind of situation. And those kind of situations are situations of disrespect. And disrespect on any kind of board, or any kind of council, or any kind of team never ends up in a good place. That's a fundamental question about our working relationship with one another, and it is very important to the successful execution of the election.
Also, a bit of a question. This was something that was very important to my appointments team and myself throughout this process. So, how will you distinguish yourself from your predecessor and from the preceding election code board administration?
Certainly, yeah. I'm a different person. I bring different experiences. I bring different skill sets. I bring different ideas. I have a lot of ideas, and I do wish to talk about those ideas and what elections would change. But I think that my experience going as a transfer student, I bring a fresh perspective to USAC elections. One of the things that I think is problematic is that we have this continuous every year. We have this problem of contentious, tumultuous, chaotic elections, and those elections, I really truly feel, destroy the foundation of this organization. It's not surprising, it's not funny, nor is it in any way, interesting to see people who come out and say that you have to resolve. Those kinds of attitudes, those kinds of perceptions are the natural progression of instability. And, one thing that I found a lot in the past election board and in its leadership was there was a lot of instability. There wasn't a good working environment for the election board. We weren't well prepared for election events, for addressing people's concerns when they came up to our office and asked us questions. This all harnesses stability. This all harnesses problems that eat out the foundation of this organization. And my fundamental goal, my absolute principal goal, will be to get that election code reform to ensure that it's not important for just this election, this coming election, this 2019, for future elections, or for 20 or so elections until it becomes a problem. Hopefully.
just kind of follow up to that. How often would you say you disagree with previous election or chair's decisions in public? But like, do you think that? If you did disagree.
So how are you saying how often did I disagree with him in public?
How often do you feel like you disagreed with the previous election board chair's decisions in public? Or did you?
I know, I disagree with the decisions, but not in public. I found it as my duty as vice chair to assist the election board chair. I disagree with him often, I told him I disagree with him. But, you know, I felt as, again, as a newcomer to the election board, oftentimes at the very beginning, I didn't find myself having that much of a voice. It took me some time to get used to people who are much more experienced than me in USAC and have much better expertise and knowledge than I do. And I just didn't feel as it was my place to speak up and say you're doing something wrong, election board chair, person who's been appointed by this very council, right? I didn't feel as if that was my right place, and I do regret that. And I would empower my ex vice presidents to speak up and to say that this is, that what you're doing is wrong, and to give us an alternate pathway that we could take. But for your question, how often did I disagree with publicly? I would say I never disagreed with publicly.
Yeah, let me reiterate, sorry, like how often did you feel like you wanted to disagree? Or, I mean, I realize it is your duty as the vice chair to, support the election board chair.
Well, every time I wanted to, and every time I disagreed, there was very strong instinct for me to disagree publicly and just let it all. That's something that I resisted, just because of what I thought my duty as vice chair was, to assist the chair, and I wasn't empowered to get to make that kind of decision.
Okay.
You guys are all.
Yeah, real quick, what's the biggest thing you think you disagree with that occurred last year?
I mean,
or something you would have done about different?
I mean, I would have to say fairness, right? We were in council. I was appointed toward the end of the fall, or in the beginning of winter, or fall. We didn't necessarily do much during the winter. We could have done much more. We could have thought about mechanics. We could have thought about a lot more than we did during what we actually did. A lot of the times it just felt like, the event was coming up next week and we're going to hit the ground running now to make everything happen, make everything work. That is a problem. That's what I like to disagree. Now, that led to all the other problems. That was the foundational problem of all the other problems. Whenever issues arise, we didn't necessarily know how to deal with it because we never talked about it. We never had dialogue about it. So any other problem that might be added to that is just an aspect that the foundation was that we did not prepare.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you plan to implement as if you are the chairperson? What are some of your plans in terms of how you not only conduct the election board, but some of the things that you would like to see from code? And so because it's one thing to ask you what you did in the past, but I want to know what can you give us in terms of your planning to give us a confidence?
Sure. Well, I'm just going to go, I wrote it all down, some of it down, not all of it, just so I can remember everything that I want to do and all the codes and changes that I want to make on the election code. Well, the first and most important thing is to actually listen and implement listen to the public and implement what the public wants, right? It's one thing to incorporate the public's opinion, it's another to actually implement it, listen to what they want, and listen to what the majority of the voices want, and actually try to implement that as an election code. That's the first thing. I want to, Iron has effectively and engaged students within the ruling clubs, unions, council, academic departments, the ASUCLA. The ASUCLA is a fantastic resource, right? They are corporate masterminds. This entire, operation, right? They do the coffee shops, they do everything. We could actually, communicate to students through those means. So listening and implementing the ideas of the student electorate is, of course, the most important. Of course, reforming the election code is the next thing, and in the election code is where all the other ideas that I have lie. So the first one that I think is a really good idea would be to set up an arbitration process. So what I mean by that is to have people who have complaints against the election board to come to us before taking the case to the judicial board. That's not to save the election board, that's actually to reduce transaction costs. There's a lot of costs associated with a complaint that someone who's complaining or someone who is defending against these cases to go to, right? You have to prepare oral arguments, you have to take time out of studying, take time out of your campaign, and focus on these cases. And I feel that is that time could be invested elsewhere. And through an arbitration process, I really do think that we could, fast track the processes and achieve and attain a mutually acceptable remedy before it transgresses the judicial board. Another thing is setting up clear guidelines on appropriate sanctions, right? We need to ensure that the investigation committee has a solid foundation that is clear and transparent to the public. In section 11.3.2, that section is where the appropriate penalties are, how it says that we're supposed to go about issuing appropriate penalties. That section is very vague, right? There isn't a lot to go off there. I would like to include language about the standards of proof required for particular allegations and particular violations. The standard of proof was a very large point of debate that we had on the election board. What standard of proof to be used in this instance or that instance? I would also like to produce a rubric for violations that we could actually quantitatively ascertain whether a particular range of punishment is acceptable for some categories of violations. And in terms of producing rubrics, I actually have experience with that because in my role as budget director at the Association Organization at Pierce College, I produced a funding rubric for which we took qualitative, aspects such as what we found were desirable aspects of a particular request and undesirable, and we made a rubric to see what range it falls in and whether we should approve that. So that's another thing that I would do with the election code. I would expand candidate reimbursements an additional 5 to 10% at least. I feel like the election board could truly afford an additional 5% toward candidate reimbursements. I did the math, and if we add 5% to the already existing 10%, we could allocate as much as $5,700 additional, total, to distribute to candidates. And if you have a pool of at least 30 candidates, each candidate could receive a little bit less than $200. And that's 30% of your total spending limit. That kind of assistance could really help students that are minorities and low income and who feel really discouraged about the election process from going out and participating. I would also add language that's clear about slate spending and candidate spending. Slate should only, in my opinion, slate should only divide costs for transactions that serve all members on that slate. The code should be specific about the loopholes surrounding this definition. The code should address whether a slate symbol on an individual advertisement is considered slate spending, etc. All these minute loopholes that exist in the current code that we can work to close and never have to deal with again. I would also like to reduce the specificity required in the election code in terms of some of the events. Like meet the candidates, these are optional events, meet the candidates, debates, these are all events that don't have to happen, but the election board says that you could have. But if you do have these events, there are very particular and specific guidelines that have to be followed. And I feel like these guidelines take away at the creativity of these events, right? A lot of times, and no one's blood, it's like your blood just stops at these events. It's just like really boring and there's no livelihood to these events. And I think that we can improve on these. I've spoken to administrators last year about offering food. I know our budget currently doesn't have the latitude to allow for purchases of food to distribute, and we can actually work to make that possible and make these events more lively. I would also like to reform the rules surrounding mandated attendance to the candidate orientations. I would retain mandated attendance, but I would allow senior campaign members to serve as proxies on those events.
We're in that last one back.
Yeah, so I want to reform that, because candidates right now are mandated to go to these candidate orientations. I will retain the mandate on that, but I will allow them to substitute a proxy for them, a senior campaign member. That way, I think it's more open to students who can't meet at those times because they have class or whatever other responsibilities that they have.
That's like the week one candidate orientation.
Yeah,
so we go over like what's allowed, what's not allowed, that thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's like the basic thing that's actually election books that you have to attend unless you have like a medical emergency or something like that. I think the proxy should be allowed to attend these events, and if it's a senior campaign member, they are entrusted in the campaign, they should be allowed to attend as a substitute for the actual candidate. I just think it's more lenient that way, and students have more ability to participate. A couple more. I want to reduce the burden on the electorate for complaints by producing a prosecutorial branch of the election board. Some of you may not know this, but the election board can't actively pursue what isn't a complaint. And it's not just a complaint, it was actually cited in the code. So it's really, strict about what we could and could not do. If the code isn't cited, you can't add a code and say, okay, you violated this, right? That's a prosecutorial power that we don't have, that I think that we should have. Because when we don't have that, the prosecutors are the students. And the students are, You know, I mean, some campaigns had professional students who knew the code really well, and they would just go out there and they would try to find every little trick they can, and because they know the code so well, they know the historical precedent behind it so well, they use that to their advantage and take it and just really, you know, flood the system with cases that shouldn't really be there. So that's a big problem, and I think that we should close that loophole as well.
So you're trying to give students who aren't as well versed, like in essence, a public defender. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we want to be that defender coordinator instead of some campaigns, individual persons selected to know the code really well, will cost everybody else.
So they have the option to opt in.
What my idea is typically that, my idea is just basically giving the election code the ability to see something and just complain and just the election code itself to file a complaint against someone. We don't do that, and I don't think we can do that. Actually, we can't do that. Basically, we can't do that. One of the things about the investigations committee, and this is actually Matthew Leonard's idea, in the investigations committee. One of the biggest challenges as investigations was seeing a complaint that's completely valid, it's completely there, but the election code simply isn't there, right? And that naturally comes because people just don't know the election code. They don't know what to cite. They don't have time to look through 47 pages and just pick out which one is work, which one isn't. Once they cite the entire election code, which they can't do, right? So there is, I think there is a real big need for this. And,
just for clarification, so it would be like, if someone has some general complaint, like y'all would just be a reference for like, oh, this is the line of code that you cite in your complaint? Is that what you're saying?
well, we could do that. It doesn't say that we can't counsel them in that terms. We can't counsel them for finance related items. You could say, oh, if someone comes to us and says we have this, we have a situation, what goes to the site? No one does that, right? People want to be anonymous. So, when we see a complaint, right, when one of our directors sees a complaint, if the vice chair sees a complaint, some violation of the complaint, we can't report that. The election does not allow for that.
Oh, like you yourselves cannot.
No, we can't prosecute, we can't go after them if you see something wrong.
Yeah.
You could be violating everything out there, and I can't do anything about it.
Do you think that would harm the goal of like impartiality though, if that's like a power that's given to e-board?
Well,
I feel like that could be potentially abused.
Anything, yeah, truly, anything can really get used if close to that extreme. And of course, it relies on who is the election board chair appointing, and who the members of that board are. But the election board directors are any ordinary students, right? If they see a violation, they should be allowed to make a complaint. And I'm not saying they get to fast track everything and get the complaint out there. I'm just saying they have the right to file a complaint. That prosecutorial power, it should be given to the election, as any ordinary student has. So, two other things that would make the election board paperless. All the contracts and documents, it's long review. We don't need all that paper, and we often lose papers. And also, I would like to see instant expenditure status reports for online filing and verification. Those are some of my ideas. I have many more. And if you have a particular question, I can definitely answer them.
Still a little confused about the prosecuting. So instead of the student body would still be, filing the complaints, but e-board would just help. I'm confused.
So, for example, let's just say someone sees a complaint, someone sees a violation, and they're filling up the form, but they don't know necessarily what code to cite. They cite some code, they send it in, and the investigation kind of goes through it and sees, okay, what you're complaining and what you cited are not consistent. This gives the election board the right to
help them out.
Well, to put the appropriate codes to be cited for that complaint, right? If you saw something that's related to campaigning, and the person isn't even citing campaigning, that should probably be there, right? So that we can actually pursue it.
You probably should do.
Well, I'm open to ideas too, so that's my idea that I have. That's a problem that we have. We can't do that.
You should, if you're, because that's kind of like partiality, like maybe you can find a creative way in terms of providing some form of legal counsel. That's a person that's not involved in making decisions should not be allowed to sanction students when they're just different. And that might be an ad hoc committee or an ad hoc person, but it shouldn't be someone.
So you're saying like Oh, someone not on election board?
No, like if you're gonna have, like, because you're basically what you're doing is you're advising students to go, not go after other students, but file complaints that would eventually, could potentially, produce sanctions for either their opposing folks or, just other students, but not.
No, I'm not saying that we want students to go after other students.
Well, no,
That's
no.
exactly what I want to avoid, right? That's the purpose of this.
Like an independent prosecutor, like
Yeah.
independent.
Kind of like
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm saying, it should be independent.
Someone who knows the code, but isn't e-board, is not a campaign, isn't anything, just.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main problem though is that if someone that's on e-board, even if your intention is not to be partial, it is very easy to make the accusation be partial. And also like, because when you have stuff like this in like real elections, they do it by like having mandated numbers of people that are like Democrats, Republicans, who are honest overseas, who keep each other accountable in that way. As we saw in the last election, we don't have any level of that type of accountability. Sometimes when things come up, we don't even know if it's supposed to go to USAC, if it's supposed to go to e-board, like in established elections, you're Secretary of State, that oversees everything. So like, I just think, and I feel like we shouldn't beat this any more than we have, because this is, you know, we're not making this change right now, but definitely like we like think about that.
Robert had a question actually a while ago. Robert?
Yeah. So I kind of have like just a series of like 3 questions, 2 short ones, and then like a long follow-up one. So I guess my first is just, you said in your interview yesterday and today that you're like, I guess not just yours, but a lot of boards' actions of staying silent last year and not speaking out when big mistakes were made. You acknowledge that's a mistake, and correct. Like, I'm just confirming that you acknowledge that that was something that you would do differently if you were chair this upcoming year.
Yeah, I wasn't active enough, and
Okay, so, and then I also like just want to make it clear too, like, you prioritize your board, if you're chaired, to also speak out and be transparent. Is that correct?
the chair should be transparent. Yes.
No. As chair, you want to also encourage your board, your vice chair, other members of election board to also be transparent and to speak out when injustices are occurring, or when there's a flaw, or even when you maybe potentially mess up badly. Okay.
Yeah, one of my ideas is actually to have, if possible, one idea go around, but to have something like recommended the election board chair. Right now, there isn't. So we can have where the directors and the vice chair can introduce a motion and suspend the chair for a little bit. That's a possibility. That way, there's a check on the chair, and the chair has a check on the entire board.
So I guess just my last question, like the follow-up to all of this is, I guess just realistically speaking, how is it, like, how can you expect the board, if the board's looking at past precedent, whether it's you or Jack Price or whoever on board, and the mistakes you made as an example for what they should do, and if you were to be appointed as chair, that would kind of be setting that precedent and setting that example. I guess, like, how can you expect them to necessarily look at you as an example to be the person to speak out on these issues when you did acknowledge that last year you made these same mistakes that you would be trying to avoid?
Are you tussling with papers?
Sorry?
I mean, I got the question. So, yeah, I mean, if Jimmy just reiterated, so you're saying, based on my experiences, based on the mistakes that I made, how could I expect my new board members, if I'm appointed as election board chair, to look at me as an example? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So, well, look, I want my election board, people on my election board to be better than me. I don't want them to make the mistakes that I made. The mistake is something that I'm using to learn off of to be better. I mean, I don't think anybody could be, could carry on any, position that, especially as a vice chair coming in new to UCLA, being a newcomer to USAC could, I don't think anyone could, maybe someone could, but I certainly couldn't. I made some mistakes, and I'm upfront about that. But I recognize my mistakes, and I recognize the problems and issues at hand. And what I'm offering this council is that experience to remedy those mistakes, and to ensure that next year's election board doesn't engage in those traps, right? I mean, I wouldn't want them to look up to my mistakes. I want them to look beyond my mistakes, understand my mistakes, and be better than that, so that they don't fall into a trap like that.
I don't know if that was labeled.
Oh, I wasn't active in my back whenever I saw something I was told to that and without bringing it up in public.
What, maybe this is a question for everyone and prepare, but, we talk about like USAC being like a kind of unified voice for the undergraduate student body, like what e-board, obviously there's competing ideas and interests, but ultimately is it supposed to be like one unified voice or potentially the chair versus the board? Where's the room for kind of like one succinct like idea versus, I don't know, like 7 people like having all these different ideas?
I feel like this might even be a question for Mahia based on your like previous experience in e-board. What do you think the answer is? Because obviously we are not in the best position as of right now. At least I personally think so. We're not in the best position right now to answer that.
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of practically, in terms of chairing that event, like we can do something like that. And at 7 people, right? We can have a chair at the event, right? We have to have one. I mean, so, I mean, you need to have these, you know, what would, I mean, even in this country, yeah, 7 different votes on one particular issue gets one vote. That is what democracy is. That, I mean, you can have, you can have very different ideas, you can have very different opinions, right? No one has to excuse from them, right? All that is part of transparency. All that is part of actually reporting public our minutes into what discussions are being held, right? The public is the ultimate decider on what was the right decision. If, for example, the decision is upheld, if a particular decision is pursued, and there was other ideas involved in those conversations are released to the public in terms of minutes, public could say, you know, the decision that was voted on, we don't like. And maybe the election board could revisit that. That's part of transparency, that's part of democracy, that's part of a better institution that I hope to harness and produce for the
And I also follow up just before we get into Bethany and Julia's questions. I know it's something that we've all talked about, and that you and I talked about in your interview as well, was the issue of the election board chair having the veto power and being able to overrule the decisions that everybody else on the board made. Do you believe that veto power should exist or no, and why not? Why or why not?
I don't think that the veto power should exist. Let me tell you, like my personal experience, I was entrusted with the role of producing the ad hoc special investigative committee. I produced minutes for it. I set up the structure for it. I set up, you know, all the procedures that were to be held. I set up the process for the bias that if we made attributed bias. All of those intricate nuances I set up with the idea that this is what democracy, this is producing a democratic system, and this system, hopefully, this decision will be upheld. And it was disheartening to see that it wasn't upheld, right? And I know how that feels to sit down until 3 a.m. writing up a rubric on how we should conduct ourselves, and then next thing you know, just gets tossed out the window. It's not a good feeling, nor is it equitable, nor is it justified or democratic in any way. That veto power shouldn't exist. If there is to be a veto power, there should be a dual veto power. The election chair, board chair has a veto over the board has a dual veto over the chair. Right? That seems to be a perfect check and balance on each other.
I'm really Bethany. Can we get to Bethany and Julia and then your question of yours? Okay, Bethany.
So hold on. Hello. You kind of went into it. I was going to ask you what in general was your definition of transparency, seeing as you, like, I wanted to get your personal definition. You kind of got into that, so Higuchi.
Transparency in terms of, in terms of the role as election board chair, this is an institution, right? Election board chair, you know, an election board, our agendas, our minutes, what we discuss, it has to be released to the public, right? How can the council, you know, is expected to release the minutes and release the agenda 72 hours prior, and the election board isn't? I could certainly implement that. I do plan on implementing something similar to that. That I think is ultimate transparency, giving the people what our discussions are, giving the student body a piece of our conversations, knowing what the discussions are, what the dialogues are, and really keeping us accountable to the public if they don't like where something is going. Quite frankly, without minutes, without the public knowing what our discussions is, they won't even know what we're intending on doing, right? They don't know what our intentions are or anything. They'll only know it when we do it and if it's wrong, right? That's the only time they'll ever know. So we need to have minutes, we need to have agendas, we need to have public expenditure reports prompt, and as quickly as possible so that the public is informed and not misled.
Thanks.
Right? I think every week, the election board chair should make it a habit, or some representative should make it a habit to come to these meetings, to come to council, and to give a weekly status update on what the election board is doing. I see no reason why the finance director should give a weekly report and the election board director shouldn't.
Julia?
If appointed, how do you see yourself engaging the student body in the election process?
I mean, I see the way in which I think is best to engage them is by reaching out to them through all the meetings that we have at our disposal. We have departments, we have unions on campus, we have clubs on campus, organizations, we have lists and email. We have. I mean, I'm sure there's a central list for everyone to get an email blast somewhere, right? My UCLA is a perfect way to get the attention of students, right? One thing that I thought was interesting that was implemented last year was that there's a side tab on my UCLA that says, hey, don't forget to vote. Those little reminders that you get. We should have a way of trying to get election board there, trying to get students' voices through that medium in every way possible. A student shouldn't come to campus and I really don't believe that any student who has been at UCLA for even a week should not know what USAC is or what even USAC stands for, right? They should know what USAC is and what it's about and what it basically does for them. So yeah. And one more thing, the ultimate way that I plan to raise student engagement is by showing them what a good USAC elections could be like. Right? My plan is my goal, my ambition, what I hope to do is to make this year's USAC election unlike any other, to make it not chaotic, not tumultuous, not toxic at all. That is my goal. I think if the students at UCLA can see what an actual democratic, authentic election is without toxic competitiveness, they will be more inclined to engage in
Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, you said that you don't think that the chair should have veto power or the ultimate decision. Do you trust your own decision making?
Wait, I said that he or she or if they should have veto.
Yeah, but if that the election board should then still be able to veto it as well. How do you foresee that being constructed and productive?
Well, I mean, you have a Senate and a Congress, and the Congress could reject the bill from the Senate can reject the bill from Congress, right?
But then, okay. But do you
That's kind of my logic.
No, I feel your logic. I was just wondering, you do believe in your own discretion, right?
Certainly, I mean, even a despotic emperor believes in this discretion. That's not for me to decide, right? That's for the public to decide whether my discretion is a good discretion, right? I mean, if my election board doesn't think that my decision is right, they should be empowered to say something about it and have the avenue to pursue that and to prove me wrong, right?
Any further questions? If I can ask another one, I'm really fascinated with this idea of legacy. I talk about it a lot of these time meetings. So what do you want your legacy to be if you're appointed on the election process, on election code, for future generations, I guess, and beyond just this year?
One thing that is present in governments in any other organization where there's actually devotion for their organization is people care not about their name and what their ideas are necessarily, but they actually care about their organization as it is. I want to future election board chairs, future board appointees, whoever it may be, even council members, there has to be a genuine passion for the organization, for not just today, but also for tomorrow, right? And that means looking at the system more critically, looking at what the problems are, and addressing it, not putting a blind eye to this. I hope my legacy is, people to take an objective look at their organizations and really understand that at the end of the day, it's any institution achieves its legitimacy by having its trust in the public and by having a solid foundation that is consistent. And any instability could ruin its reputation and ruin just what everything that is at this time from everything that's been on this past. There's a history behind it, and it's important to continue it and make change necessary. And without the trust of the public, with rampant instability every year getting worse and worse to the point where council is appointed when it has historically been appointed, right? It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's because we are harnessing toxic environment for students, an environment that's discouraging, and an environment that's going to come back and really be resolved with USAC.
I just want to know what exactly or how exactly was the position of vice chair defined last year?
Liaison between the candidates and the election board, assisting the election board chair, electing the election board chair, preparing documents, signing documents, releasing documents, maintaining documents, being officers. Yeah.
And you were in the position, you got like that state that you had to support the election board chair no matter what.
I guess going off of that then, do you think that there's possibility to change the descriptions of some of the positions? I know we talked maybe about endorsements chair. Do you believe that there should be some degree of reform to position descriptions of all these directors?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, there is a lot of room we can improve on the vice chair position. Vice chair position is like 8 lines, very simple, very mundane tasks. Even if there is a vice chair, I feel like no one would do this, right? It's like how very small, very. I mean, and also like the liaison between candidates and the election board. I mean, no one would get that. They always bypass the needs, go to chair. I mean, it's just. We can certainly make the election board chair much more vice chair, much more prominent in the election board to make sure that managing the agendas, taking minutes, these are all things that could be added to the role of the vice chair. And also being a voice on the board, being someone who's able to mitigate, complaints, being someone who's able to be the go-to person whenever complaints do come in, filtering everything through the vice chair before it gets to the chair. Like these things will give the vice chair more legitimacy and much more stature in the third.
Any other last questions? All right, then we will end Q&A, and if you want to give your closing statement, it is however long you like.
I'll just make it quick. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really excited. Just excited for school overall. I'm really appreciative of this position of the election board being here because a lot of student organizations don't even have such an important election board. Like the election board under organizations isn't even important. It's like a side job, right? Here, there is a really strong emphasis on democracy, on representation, on fair election, and I am very thankful for that, for being in that situation and finding myself there in front of you, asking to be the election board chair, to be the person responsible for the elections next year. I hope I've been able to answer all your questions as thoroughly as possible.
All right, per usual, we will move into ARC's recommendations. So Robert, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, as usual, I'll just give the general recommendation, and then as long as it's okay with Claire and everyone, we'll go through all 4 of us actually who were there to give our recommendations. So before I go into it, I just wanted to thank Allie especially, but all of ARC for being able to show up last night. We did an hour-long interview instead of our usual 15 to 20-minute interview. So I really appreciate Allie and everybody else being able to make it. That being said, ARC voted to disapprove, and I'll go first on what my vote was and just explaining why I voted the way I did and everything. So as long as everybody else is comfortable too, I'll just go ahead and I voted to disapprove. And my main hesitancy I'll just go through like my three big ones, I guess, I guess I just have a general hesitancy to appoint most people who were involved, not just on eBoard last year, but mainly like encapsulated in the events that occurred last year. And I think that my concern really lies in the mistakes that were made being shown as an example for future eBoard and the future members of that. And I just don't know what like setting a precedent like that would mean. My second thing was just, and I don't necessarily, I don't fault this with anyone, but I just feel like yesterday there was a lot of avoidance of issues or not direct answering of a lot of concerns that we brought up. And I don't know how the other ARC members view this, but that was definitely a concern for me. And then I'm just really concerned about these ideas about democracy and letting the voice lie with, the public being translated into actions just based off what I saw last year. So that's why I voted to disapprove. But I definitely want to let the other two people that are here speak as well. So Ali and Jessica can go ahead too.
But I think that there were just some shortcomings in terms of some things that you spoke about tonight with regards to standing by certain decisions that were made last election cycle. I think that there are certain moments, and I don't want to make it into a bigger thing than it was, but it was a pretty tense and pivotal moment for a lot of students on campus, and I think that not standing up in those times to do what you feel is morally right, it just, to me, it indicates a little bit about, I would really like to have an election board chair who's willing to stand up in those moments. And I do understand that hindsight is 2020, and you're now you see that you should have done that and maybe would. But I just think that, that's also not an amazing first experience to have on the election board. And so it could, color the way that you and inform the way that you may act as election board chair in the coming year. And I just think that, in my opinion, and from what I gleaned from the interview and from your application and your resume, it's just you're very qualified. But I think that and that you'd be a great addition to the election board. But for me, I was just chair as somebody who maybe doesn't have those experiences informing how they would act as the chair, and who's a little bit more distant from that, because I think that it really can have an effect on how they would operate, which could be a positive thing, but it's not necessarily a risk that I think we should be willing to take. And I just, again, felt a little bit uneasy about going forward with someone who, in those really difficult times, didn't stand up, and that's just where it really lacked. That's the shortcoming that I saw, and that really sat with me, in all of the communications we had. You have to microphone and they can hear. Thank you, Ali. And then Jessica?
Yeah, please forgive me if I try to organize my thoughts, but it's a pretty big decision, so I might be a little confusing. But I originally voted a no recommendation for a couple reasons. The first reason is just it was a big decision, especially I think we can all agree that the election board chair would definitely be something that we're all very concerned about and wanting to make sure that we make the right decision. I felt very conflicted throughout the whole interview because there were just a lot of things to take into consideration, and I wanted to go home and think about it. And given the day to think about it, looking back on it, we're not going to deny that the election this year was absolutely a nightmare. And I think there are a couple things that I really thought about last night, rethinking with Maher, is that One, I'm not going to deny what a toxic environment can be to be told that you're an amateur when you're coming to UCLA for the first time as a transfer student. I think that's something that I don't, and yes, there are certain ethical things I can totally understand, which I felt yesterday. I totally understood where the concern came from. I think for me, I don't want to also deny the environment that was set up that caused him to act a certain way. Yes, we can make certain decisions in certain environments, but based on that environment, that decision very much could change. I think it's very hard. I don't want to underestimate how terrifying it can be to come to a group of students who are so, especially within USAC, who know so much institutional knowledge, to be told that you are an amateur and that your voice doesn't matter. And I can see after a few quarters how that can dwell on your ability to speak up in like situations like this. I think too that one thing that I really appreciated was his response to really at the end of the day, if you don't trust him as e-board chair, he doesn't want to force anyone to pick him, because at the end of the day, his concern is whoever is the best individual, and he doesn't believe a distrust between the e-board chair and the rest of council is something that should happen. And so if he needs to give up that position in order to pick someone that council trusts, I think for me just was really showing of this character. I'm like, this is a decision that I will continuously not feel comfortable until election season happens. And we talked about it in ARC, and at the end of the day, we're not going to know what happens until the elections happen. And so I think his willingness to come here, to go through this again, to really trudge through all the mud as someone who wants to reapply for this position. I don't believe Maher is a terrible person. I don't believe he has terrible ethics. And I do think his ability or his willingness for this position comes from a good place. And so I said no recommendation, but I'm leaning towards an approval. So that's where I'm at. Sorry, it was really messy.
No, don't apologize. Thank you for your candor. And if, before we get into discussion, if I can just kind of speak a little bit to my own and my department instructor's rationales as well, because I think that everything was said by members of ARC did bring up a lot of valid concerns and points. When I was going through this process, and when my team and I were discussing, and it was a long process, a lot of conversations, a lot of longer interviews than we generally do as well. There were two kind of main considerations that we were weighing, right? On top of all the other considerations that we weigh in every appointment, for this one, it was kind of weighing the importance of having someone that can challenge the institution and that understands the flaws that have been ingrained in USAC and elections for years and years now, while also having somebody that I felt had the institutional know-how and the experience with elections to actually get that stuff done. Because it is one thing to stand there and say, elections are toxic, let's change them. It's another to actually have the know-how and the understanding to put it into practice. I know sometimes I myself have been frustrated in USAC because there was something that seems to be like so glaringly wrong, right, and so glaringly fixable. And then when you realize, you know, the bureaucracy of things, the bylaws, the constitution, the different people that have to vote on it, different stakeholders involved, it becomes so much more complicated. And so the last thing I wanted to do was throw somebody into this position that maybe brought a fresh face and a great vision and had these lofty ideals, but wasn't really going to do that. And wasn't really going to put them into practice and wasn't empowered with the knowledge and experience that it takes to do that, especially in a year that is so pivotal and that requires somebody that understands what exactly went wrong, why that went wrong, and more importantly, how the election code can be changed, how this tangible document that not only will affect elections this year, but elections for years to come, for the next 10, 20, 50, whatever years, right? And with that was balanced to the first concern I brought up, somebody that could challenge the institution. And I'm the first to recognize that me appointing the vice chair to somebody that we all can unilaterally agree did not do a good job as chair is not the most intuitive thing for somebody that's going to challenge the institution, right? But I felt that him being so close to the situation and this being his very first election season ever, so not really going into last year with the same preconceived notions that maybe some of us who are seniors and have seen more effective election boards or better, not much better, but better election processes might have, that his ability to have last year, which is such a non-representative year, be his first election season, and really have that one example to work off of, I thought really did give him the perspective of being able to challenge it and not being too jaded or cynical or vested in the ways that it's been done for the last 5-10 years. I don't know. I think that sometimes to really be able to critically challenge the institution, you sometimes have to work inside of it first, and you have to make mistakes. I'm the first to say I don't agree with everything my predecessor, her predecessor, his predecessor did, but I believe that getting to work with them and learn from them and be in this office for as long as I have has given me some really valuable experience. And so similarly, I believe that Mayor's ability to work with somebody who was flawed and was, far less than ideal, gives him a really valuable perspective. So I know that was long-winded, but those two considerations on top of the ideas, the vision, the experience, the things that I look for in every appointment, were what led my directors and I to make the decision that we did. And lastly, we did speak to other members of last year's election board, not Jack, but other directors who did have concerns with Jack, with other members with things like misogyny and sexism that were brought up, things like lack of preparedness, things like the dynamics and the lack of cohesion, and all of them did support Mayor's appointment and believe that he could make these necessary changes. And I don't know if I have another candidate at present that I feel even half as confident in as mayor. So we really would have to wait and reopen and hope that we can find someone better. So that's my really long-winded. Would anyone else like to participate in discussion? Jamie.
I'll go. Just a note on, because I also had discussions with some people on e-board, and it was the way that I took hers, it was less them supporting my hair and more them being very adamantly against some other people. So that's kind of the framing that's what I took away from those conversations. Another thing is that I really do understand what you're saying about the types of situations that you're in and the context that's coming with being a newcomer. But one of the things that I really needed to see was an explicit addressing of the problems that happened last year. And I felt like they were alluded to, but I didn't hear enough of an actual problem. So like, for example, when I was getting at transparency, because I sat through all of those USAC meetings, like I was here until like 2 in the morning and every week listening to all of those hearings. And I think that your answer on transparency focused more on just how to make the candidates' campaigns more transparent, whereas one of the biggest problems with transparency for me last year was when USAC was questioning you and Jack about what the disagreement was on election board about, the voter disqualification. And it took Isabel storming in and saying that it was a unanimous vote against it that Jack vetoed. And like that was a back and forth for so long, and to not have like something like that kind of addressed explicitly, I do believe that you have learned, and I can see that, and I appreciate that. But for me, actions speak louder than words, and I sat through a lot of time in those meetings, seeing things that I was not very impressed with, and I do appreciate that you came here and talked for so long, and did talk about your personal growth. But it wasn't enough for me to overlook the actions that I saw and have proof that there is going to be a change. Because as much as the environment was tough, being in that position of power, the environment is always going to be tough. And I think it kind of says something how you react in a specific situation, that it can obviously Jack his environment was awful. Like we can be honest about that. And I think he underperformed even with that. And so that's where I'm at the way the conversation.
Mayor, do you want to respond to any of those concerns that ARC or Jane or myself brought up? If not, that's really fine, but if you'd like to, I'll see my time to you.
I'd like to respond to what Jamie said actually about the specifics. The reason why I don't necessarily go to specifics, I say general, I think that intentional. I don't want to necessarily have anyone who's watching this and doing those moments, right? Things occurred that should not have occurred. My mistake was pursuing them the wrong way. I pursued it. I committed to find that to it. I said I made it my goal to go to ensure that a wrong was made right. That wasn't sufficient, and I admitted that. But that's the condition that I found myself in. And that is what I mean, along with all the benefits that I have to offer, but this was my shortcoming, and I understand that after speaking out of the worst, but I was trying, this is the time I'm asking to be in the chair, to show you what I'm capable of. That last year, last quarter, right, the last couple of weeks where it really got intensive, isn't a representative sample of who I am as a leader, who I could be as the election chair. I respect your opinion. I think that it's a valid concern, and I am taking that to heart, and I have taken it to heart, and I do feel that I can be better than I was last year and improve on what I was like. Be a better leader, be a more outspoken leader, or how a leader should be, right? And in my past positions, I have been an outspoken leader. I've done a lot of great things for organizations that I've been a part of, and I plan to do great things for children as well.
Without bringing up like names or specific incidents, do you think you could speak on some of the general things that went wrong? Because I agree, it does feel a little bit big, so.
Certainly. Okay, so some things that went wrong, we had a lot of issues with people talking over other people, right? Where, for example, if a female was talking, a male would just storm and talk over her, and just completely dominate conversation and make it only about him. That happened continuously, and it wasn't addressed by the chair, even after I told the chair this needs to be addressed publicly as your role as chair. You need to address this. I didn't do it, so I didn't feel as if I was in the right to do it. I didn't want to bring any attention to the victim or anybody. I went around and I talked to them on the phone for hours, trying to help them regulate anything with parents that could talk, that make a point of contact for me to resolve it and just to make it resolved. I thought I could resolve it through those methods, but it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. But that's just a specific instance, talking over a person, giving snarky remarks, sexist remarks. I've heard them. It's distasteful, disrespectful, it's completely disgusting, and it's not in any part of the organization. So it's just unacceptable 100%. And anyone, who is caught doing that, and people caught doing that, and they don't know responsible. They should be reprimanded and suspended, terminated, just disappear from any kind of organization where they're trusted to schools. So an instance like that, giving sexist remarks, not listening to suggestions of each other, right? That comes with also talking over them. Another one that I found interesting was, for example, say a female member of our board was given responsibility to take over to carry on an event, and male would come in and pretend that this was his event, not having the responsibility. And how many times I yelled at this person and tell them you cannot do this, right? I even went to our administrator, I talked about this kind of dynamic and how it's healthy, but I just didn't think that it would have been proper or to call it out on the discussion. I didn't feel as if the person who was the victim of that would have felt comfortable, and I just didn't want to put it in the spot. I thought the way I pursued it would resolve the conflict, and it didn't, and I understand, and I am capable of speaking up. I can speak in front of you, I can speak in front of someone who's committing a wrong, and I'm certainly not going to suspend you from that. No one is above the election book, and no one is above respect, basic human dignity of another person. That's all I have.
And just coming back to all that, because like to be frank, for me, this is not really an interview. This is more of a formality. Your real interview was your performance as vice chair. And like, I want you to understand that I am hearing you. I am gonna vote no. I appreciate that you have explicitly laid this out for me. But what I would need in order to feel comfortable with yes is to have an opportunity where I'm seeing you actively put this into practice, so I know it's not just words, because I didn't see it in your job performance. And I know that there's nothing that, you don't have an opportunity to show me that right now, and so I just wanted to let you know that I am hearing you, and I do have faith that if you make this appointment, I really hope to see that change instituted. If you don't make this appointment, I think you learn valuable But that is why, despite the good answer that you just gave, I was
I totally respect that, and think that if you don't believe that I can carry out my duties as election board chair responsibly, you should vote no. That is the right decision to make. But and if I do make it through this appointment, I do vote to approve.
Any other discussion, comments, questions? If not, if anyone wants to put forth a motion.
Oh, I can, sorry. I'd like to put forth a motion to approve Maher for e-board chair. I don't know, sorry.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Robert? Robert? All right, we will move into a vocal roll call with IVP.
No.
John Rep 2? AAC? EDC? CSC?
Saws. Did you say CSC? The line's a bit weird.
Yes.
Could you come back to me at the end, if that's
Sure.
okay? Thank you.
Zach?
I couldn't hear the votes beforehand, so could you just repeat that, please, real quick?
Sure. IVP, no. EVP, no. Gen Rep 2, yes. AAC, no. CEC, no. CSC, skip.
No. Thank you.
SBC? And CSC.
No.
So by a vote of, oh, sorry, TSR, I'm sorry, Jessica.
It's okay, yes.
By a vote of 3 to 6 to 0, the motion does not pass, and Mayor is not appointed to the election board. Thank you still for being with us tonight, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I'll be great rest of the day. So I'll talk about this more in my report, but applications will be reopened tomorrow. All right. Do we feel like we need a recess to kind of reset the tone? Or do we want to jump right into special presentations? Great. Okay, so it's 8:29. Let's come back at 8:40. Yeah. Okay. Cool. See you then.
myself to be. I do think it needs to get said.
We're
I do
back
agree
live.
with it, but it doesn't need to be from me.
All right, so George just stepped out for a moment, but he's going to be back in a second. Our next item on the agenda is special presentations, beginning with the Bruin Advocacy Grant funding presentation that wonderful UP Jimmy. Reminder again that we'll be voting on a consent item to approve this at our next meeting, so just pay attention. It is just more of a formality, but we want to make sure these guidelines are consistently applied throughout the year. So, go for it.
Yeah, so the Bruin Advocacy Grant is basically like EDP's fund for other student groups or students who want to do advocacy and need help with like travel and lodging. So you can go to the next slide. So this is just a general overview. So like I said, it provides funds for travel, lodging, meals, and if there's like, you're going to a conference, then it will cover registration fees, depending on the occasion. It's just made to help students have their own opportunities to do advocacy. That way they're not inherently having to just interact with our office in order to have that opportunity. It will be chosen by the Assistant Vice President each year. Like the EDU will be the governing body of that. You can go to the next one. So eligibility must be a UCLA student enrolled in at least 8 core units. If an individual applies, it must be good academic standing. If a group applies, it must be registered as a school. So conference eligibility described as a large gathering organized by a large reputable group or movement to discuss, network, train, or do workshopping around actionable advocacy. It must relate to advocacy, either local, state, national, or international issues, or student group core mission statement as stated in the group's bylaws and constitution. It may only fund transportation, lodging, and registration. Conference must take place and on or before Monday of week 10, spring quarter 2019. Next one. So state advocacy eligibility, visit to Sacramento, officials and lawmakers must relate to advocacy or student group's core mission statement. For individual students, interests of advocacy must be related to advocacy at local, state, national, and international issues. Grant may on lodging, et cetera, airfare, grant, and transportation, and it must again take place before Monday of week 10 of spring. Oh, let's just say 2019. I'll make sure to fix that typo. 2019 quarter. Federal advocacy, so this is defined as visiting Washington, D.C. based officials and lawmakers. Same stuff that was in the last slide. I'll make sure to fix this typo again. Next slide. So funding rules for state advocacy funds account for airfare, lodging, ground transportation, and gas reimbursement only. Airfare expenditures are capped at $200 per person. Ground transportation, $100 total. Lodging is $150 per night and should accommodate all individuals traveling. Gas reimbursement is at the discretion of the vehicle used. Vehicle use needs to be under the ownership of one of the students going on advocacy. No rental cars will be covered under. Oh my gosh, this is sorry. For an advocacy grant, not defenders. Okay. I'm fixing the typos as I go, so they will definitely be read next time. So for federal advocacy, no more than 3 persons, including the EDU staff council, will be covered by Bruin Advocacy Grant. Federal advocacy funds must be requested no less than 5 weeks in advance of the departure group date, unless the group demonstrates that the applicant could not have been aware of the action, requires their advocacy for that time, and the advocacy is critically time sensitive, and the applicant could reasonably influence any action. This is largely because DC travel is incredibly expensive, just to go through personally. So federal advocacy funding again, direct federal advocacy funds account for airfare, ground transportation, subsidized meals and lodging, and then just more specifics on maximum caps for those funding. For conference funding, next slide. Registration costs are paid for student registration costs are paid for student organizations for conferences. Registration costs may not be funded. They include membership fees, and then information that's required by the committee is the itinerary, an outline, printout, defining registration prices, and contact info for grouping. And lastly, this is just the total allocations. We have 15 grand allocated for the year and 5 grand each quarter. Any questions?
Is the total budget, is it the same as years past or is that different?
We could not find that information.
Okay.
We weren't able to get in contact with Kevin, and then that wasn't information for passed down. So this is just a standard that we found in our budget that seemed like it.
I was just curious. I don't know. I know it's changed a lot in the past 2 years. Since
Yeah.
So. Cool. Any other questions for Jamie? All right. Thank you so much for presenting. And I hope I can see the have on that. We really are grateful that such a funding body exists. So thank you for continuing to maintain it.
Yeah.
Speaking of wonderful funding bodies, George and SBC are joined by the finance director of finance.
Yes, finance director Denise, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Denise, and for your patience. And feel free to, if you want to sit at the table or stand, whatever is best for you. Yeah, sure. Is she part of it?
I don't have a Mac connector. Sorry. Yeah, you can email me the presentation if you want to.
What kind of Mac do you have?
MacBook Pro.
Do you have an adapter?
It's like a USB-C,
Do you want to look at your
HDMI?
Oh, yeah. Do you have this kind of? Yeah.
No.
Oh, you have an HDMI. Oh, okay. So maybe that will work. Let's try it.
We love Signal.
Oh, wait. Yeah, cool. Do you wanna, let's see. This cord will reach if you wanna come up here. Up to the front, and then we can just.
I really was not able to be able to take the account. The worst texter in history. I'm a horrible texter. I think God, Kevin's the worst communicator. Literally, like, yeah. And so is Big, so they work perfectly. Take a run, jump, really, that would be just guys in the group. All right, whenever you're ready.
All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Denise Chow. I'm the Assistant Chief of Finance for SWC. Basically what that means is I manage the programming fund, which is what I'm here to talk about today. So the programming fund is a source of funding that is available to pretty much all UCLA undergraduate organizations and clubs, and specifically for like health and wellness related events that aim to build a healthier community. Eligibility, you have to be registered with SOL, of course. For most orgs, we give up to $750, but for SHN, the Student Health Network, which works pretty closely with SWC, we can give up to $1,000. And groups are able to apply multiple times throughout the year, just as long as each application is for an event, just so that we make sure that they're not like trying to double up on our funding, and keep it at $750. We can't retroactively fund, which means groups have to apply before the event. We require that it's at least 2 Mondays before the event is set to take place. And if they apply early enough and there's an issue with the application or something, we can revise that and resubmit and still be eligible. Guidelines, since we're helping fund, we require that all advertising has the SWC logo. And since we're aware that the funding comes from student fees, we want all events to be open to the UCLA community. All students can be a part of whatever event they're putting on. And all allocations must be used only for the approved items. So if we approve of like venue costs, for example, and then later we get asked to reimburse like food, we'll reject that, of course. And then has to be related to health and wellness. There are a lot of programming funds available, so this one is specifically for health and wellness, and we really want to make sure of that. Prohibited items, I think food is the biggest one. We get that a lot, and unfortunately we can't accept that just because we're a health-related fund, and that would take out a lot of our funding. So our application is online through USAC website. We kind of just ask applicants to describe the event, how much they're asking for, budget breakdown, other sources of funding. We're like kind of like a last resort, but not like as dramatic. We just want to like, tap into other sources of funding to be sure that they've covered their bases, and then attach documentation. We found like that a lot of applicants give us screenshots of like Amazon cards and things, which is fine. It's usually just for like approximation. And then every week SWC meets and reviews the applications. We vote based on like the application, how detailed it is, if the event relates to us. And we do grant partial funding. So if they request like 2 items, one of them is ineligible, we'll reject that part, but still like, give funding for what they're eligible for. And then final steps, if we approve of their application, we just send them some paperwork, and then they give us some documentation back. And then we have office hours if they have any questions. And we really make it their responsibility to kind of keep the ball moving. Because we've had a lot of applications like get accepted, but then they don't really do anything with the money, or they like, don't claim it. So it's kind of a waste. But yeah, that's the programming fund. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions?
I don't really have a question, just a comment. If you could put somewhere on the application that the requisitions need to be submitted within 14 days of the event, that would be great.
Okay. Any last questions for Denise? Comments, concerns? Thank you so much for coming, for presenting. Thank you again, and again, I'm so glad that such a fun exists. So that pretty much wraps up our planning presentations. Najira, if you can just email myself and Heather when your office can present on the travel mini fund and the other one that's evading me at the moment.
So academic.
Yes, and thank you. Just let us know maybe in the next month.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And then that should wrap up all our funding presentations, which is exciting. So woo. Okay. Awesome. So we will move into officer member reports. And I will go first. So as usual, appointment updates. This past week, we were really focusing on election board, so that was kind of the primary focus. But in addition, apps are still open for CS mini fund, which we really haven't been publicizing that all that much, again, because we've been focusing on e-board, but CS mini fund, we're going to be emailing all the service orgs. Bethany's going to help me publicize, and then it'll be more on social media. So look out for that, share that. If there's any other members that you know that are interested in service, and then maybe didn't already apply to CAC or CPC, CS mini fund's another really great service funding body, so please help with that. We also still have that one more vacancy on CPC, so again, that application is still open. J-Board are closed, and we were hoping to be able to interview them this week, but more was just all consuming. So J-Board hopefully will have 2 appointees for you all next meeting. I will keep you posted, but that is the plan for now. Apps are also open for USAC Media and Publicity Chair, which isn't a super demanding appointment. It's kind of fun if anyone in your office or anyone you're friends with or know is interested in doing the social media for USAC and kind of helping with general USAC-wide PR. That's a really cool opportunity to get involved. Would look great in our resume if they want to go into comms or marketing. And then in terms of election board, we're just going to be reopening applications. I'm going to likely keep the folks that applied in the application pool. Like, we're not gonna make them reapply, re-interview. However, like I said, I don't really feel confident in any of them. Things may change and they may bring more materials to my attention, but I would really appreciate if you all could help disseminate, again, the application and find maybe members that I wasn't able to catch, my office was able to catch in our roundabouts the first time. So help with that, and hopefully that is something that can be done before the summer is over, but again, no promises, because as of now, we need people to leave. So that's really it for appointments. And then there's a few more that will open once school starts, but those are really the big ones for summer. And then in terms of other things, the only really big update for me is that I wrote a speech. So look forward to seeing that speech at the This is Bruin Life event. I would love again to have you all there and cheer me on. So,
What day is it?
September 23rd. Yeah, and it's a really awesome event, not just because of me at all, but because of all the other students. Nicole Breno will be there and speaking. Some other folks that just really have amazing stories and experiences will be speaking too. So really awesome event. Put on your calendar. I'm working with Jessica as well on an open house type thing that we talked about for new students during welcome week. I think we're looking at Thursday, so I'll send out an email or a message either via all of you about that in the coming days. And I'll send you around that document with E-code recommendations as well. Again, like I said, e-board is just really a big focus. Cool. So that's really about it for me. Any appointments questions before we jump into IVP? Happy to answer. Yeah.
What connection is that? So you can stable up so quick.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So then you mean.
Yeah. Okay, so some updates. So one of the early things that happened in those last 2 weeks was I found out about the surprise regents meeting. And so it's apparently they like to have like these kind of specific committee meetings that they only post online 2 days before, but they don't announce it anywhere. So I watched on that now. But so we were able to turn out about 10 students to come and like through the meetings make public comment, which I was pretty happy with considering it's like we had 2-3 days notice and it's during the summer. And so most of the things that they talked about were, one, making sure the regions are prioritizing communicating with students and telling us when these meetings are happening. That was a really big focus for UCSA. They always do that. And then there were a lot of comments made about like health services. That was one of the committees that was happening, and accountability for the negotiations with unions, especially because one of the topics was UCOP salaries. Which I definitely encourage you guys to look into if you have the time. It was a very technical conversation, but they are massively restructuring salaries in UCOP administration. Like, basically, it's them trying to comply with the audit. The auditor suggested that salary gaps should only be about 60%. So, like, if you are the lowest paid person in a position and you make $50K a year, and the highest paid person makes $100K a year in that position, that's a 100% gap. The recommendation was 60%, and the smallest gap they had was 103, I think, and the largest gap they had was 175. So in order, yeah.
So this is for the same position, people want less.
Yeah. So like there can be variances in like maybe like experience level and stuff, so you get like, you know, your step ladder rises, but doing around the same, And so they're trying to restructure it. So some people are going to lose fat amounts of money. Like some of the figures that was up there was like decreasing salaries by 100 grand. And so it was definitely a very intense conversation that was happening. One of the regions, Region Perez, was really pushing, making sure that when they're looking at how they're restructuring these salaries, to make sure that there's like accountability and being equitable. So like if one position is kind of one of those like paid salary jobs and it's more heavily dominated by women, there have been studies that show like veterinarians, the wage increase has gone down compared to doctors once women started dominating the field and making sure like that's not a discrepancy that exists. So it's cool to see that the regions are actually working on that. But yeah, big changes to come. So I'll let you know what happens with that at the next meeting, because that's definitely going to be further discussed. We also did a photo petition for AB 2943, which essentially labels the sale of conversion therapy as a fraudulent practice, so you can't sell conversion therapy services anymore. So that we got 100 photo petitions and tweets sent out in support of that bill, and it passed the Senate. So now it's just sitting on Governor Brown's desk. Hopefully he'll sign it, and then I'm sure there are going to be impending lawsuits. But we'll see how that plays out. And then the new repatriation bill that I was working on got pulled out of appropriations, so that's going to run the Senate, and there hasn't really been any no votes on it, so that's looking good. And then SB 320, which gives access to abortion services on campus, also passed out of appropriations, and that was a big UCSA priority. So we're looking really good with our priority bills right now. And another thing that I want to put on your radar is SLAP, the Student Labor Advocacy Project, is co-hosting a conference. It's the Student Labor Organizing Conference, so SLOC, which is September 15th and 16th. It's going to be on UCLA's campus. So especially for all you guys that are like physically here, you just have to register before September 1st. If you can find anyone looking up on Facebook, my profile picture has all the info about like applying and stuff like that. And basically at that conference, they're going to talk about like what union negotiations look like, what grassroots organizing looks like, do a lot of skills building and workshops. And it would definitely be a really good way to get updated on some of the stuff that's happening right now, because the contract negotiations are still not moving anywhere for some of the unions. So this is the work staying for.
Thank you very much. Zach.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So back applications for appointments are still out and up. So if you can, hello?
We can hear you, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So applications are still out. So if you have anyone that may be interested in applying, just let them know. And all the information for those appointments are on the doc. But if they have any questions, just have them reach out to me and hopefully I can answer their questions.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry, I think I should run out. Cece.
Yeah, so things are really moving through about, which is really exciting, but a lot of it is confidential, so I can tell you. What's not confidential, so we'll be hopefully be getting like the actual email sent out with the registration form, so it's really important for all of your offices if you do want to have a table at the Enrollment Activities Fair. So like register for that and sign up. That should be coming out sometime next week. We're just trying to like get certain things kind of cranked out with it, but yeah, so yeah.
Thank you. I wish you could tell us who the Brew Batch timeline was, but it's okay. Wonderful. We'll move on to TSR. Jessica?
Hi, so these past 2 weeks I've been meeting with Heather, the head of the Transfer Student Center, and I've been meeting with Tamisha, the resident director, and today I met with the Transfer Welcome Reception Planning team. So as of now, we've pretty much prepared a lot of the events that are going to happen this year in the Transfer Center and what we're going to collaborate on. I'm definitely going to be working on a lot of programming on the Hill, especially with transfer residents, because it's something I'm not familiar with, but it's something I also want to help make sure that all transfers have more programming on the Hill. And then another thing is the Transfer Welcome Reception. We have a location booked, which is going to be on September 25th from 5 to 7, and it's going to be Wolfgang Puck. The patio is booked, and the Transfer Student Center is also going to be booked for this event. And so we'll be looking for volunteers in the upcoming weeks once we start planning it more. So if any of you could help out, or if you know someone that could help out, we would really appreciate it.
Wonderful. When did you say that event was?
It's going to be September 25th from 5 to 7.
Well, I just want to put it on my calendar. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. Next, SWC.
Awesome. So for those of you that don't know yet, the dispenser outside of SWC was moved to the elevator area to be out of sight from the cameras. And Roy and ACCLA have been kind to let us put some sort of signage above to make it sort of official with a dispenser for menstrual hygiene products and free condoms that we replenish almost every day. So it's gonna look like this, sort of. And it says, free condoms and menstrual hygiene products. Please take what you need. These resources were brought to UCLA by the labor and advocacy of women of color and the Student Wellness Commission. And it says, Student Wellness Commission 2018. Pretty cool. So that's gonna happen soon. And then also my staff's deadline to turn in their budget proposals is tonight. So the programming fund and everything will be open probably by the end of this week.
Awesome, thank you so much. That's exciting about this time. And last but not least, AZ.
Oh, yes. So I've actually been meeting with a lot of the department chairs. Specifically, a lot of those are proposed to the academic senate, because one of the things we want to talk about is addressing majors and the policies in which students can proceed in their major or rather graduate under their major. So a couple of students kind of came to me majoring in sociology. And so what happens is like the part of the policy is regarding like if you can't pass like a lower division like course twice, then you eventually get dropped in the major. However, the sociology department has like taken care of students who were done like an advanced amount of stuff in the major. So like, they've taken all their courses, upper div and lower division. It was just that particular course at which that they were unsuccessful, and so they actually aren't really responsive to the petitions that students have set forth, and so therefore the students will have to not only not graduate in that major, but then also have to switch and do other majors. So we're in conversation trying to advocate for those students not only we can graduate with a degree that they virtually earned for like 98% of them, but also making sure that like the department heads understand to work with students. The Academic Affairs Commission is also collaborating with a lot of different events this upcoming months, these next 2 months, with collaborating with the Transfer Center during June Trooper and Welcome Week, as well as the Major Blast that will be coming up in October, and as well as a couple of different events in regards to the LGBTQ Center. So really just establishing partnerships thus far. We're actually going to be beginning our module with the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for our state, which is for students for social justice and allyship through education, which will be drafting allyship for LGBTQ students. So that's part of the discussion with the new director of that department.
Thank you so much for all the awesome stuff. Okay, admin reps.
Census 2020, a little bit of information coming up in terms of sending UCLA reps and us kind of participating there. In the city, West LA, there are a number of neighborhoods that are going through community plan updates. Not Westwood in particular, but West LA, Palms, Mar Vista, Delray, Venice, and Westchester Playa. Those are 4 community plans where the nature of the community and zoning will be articulated for the next 20 years. There is university housing and university staff and students living in those areas. So to the extent that you want to participate or watch those processes, I encourage you to do that. The process is a speedy 3-year process. The city has often used 7 years to do this. The concern by stakeholders is that the outreach and publicity is being shortened. And so the opportunity for more thoughtful engagement is being compressed before staff are developing final plans. So Westwood and areas kind of up in this area aren't scheduled for next maybe 4 to 5 year plan, but those communities south may be of interest to you to kind of keep an eye on your open.
Hello? Fellas.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, wait, I had a question. Sorry. I'm horrible. I was wondering if it'd be possible to get any more information about the whole census thing via email, because a lot of CSC projects work in the areas that you've mentioned, and that'd be like very helpful to the advocacy.
Yeah. That being the CSC.
Soz. Hello. Let me put my face on. Hi.
Right.
Sorry.
I'm behind the laptop, Bethany, so I'll
Oh.
send you information.
Okay. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Sorry. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
I have everybody's nameplates in finally. So if you're on campus, you can stop by my office to pick it up if you're not here. And then just make sure you double check it to ensure there's no typos. I did have a typo on one of them, so I'm sending that back and getting a new one hopefully next week. But yeah, so just double check and make sure that everything looks good on it. And then also just as like a heads up, as you all are adjusting your funding applications for the current school year, make sure you send those to us so that we can get them on the USAC website, and make sure if you are changing any of your funding deadlines, send those as well, because we create a master document of like when all the funding deadlines are for different sources. So we want to try to get that updated. The USAC website is pretty outdated as of now because both our webmasters are not currently working during the summer. But just send me what you can and we'll work on it and hopefully get that updated by week 0, early week 0. And then just as an FYI, USAC Fund site is currently having some technical issues. So mainly that's affected contingency applications, but we've been kind of working around it by having groups just fill out the Word doc and then email it directly to Ryan through the FICOM Gmail address. So if you hear of any groups that are trying to apply to contingency and having the issue getting the app on USAC funds, just have them fill out the Word doc and email it directly so that they can still get their application in and be in the funding round. But we'll try to hopefully have that resolved soon as well. At the moment, we don't really know what's causing the error. It's all of the applications right now on USAC funds, but contingency is just the one that's currently open and people are applying to. So that's it.
Nothing to add to that?
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your reports. All right, and we'll move into contingency programming.
Is this the guidelines or the actual?
The actual programming.
Okay. So for this week, there were 5 groups applied. I think I sent out another one right before the meeting because there was a group that had just applied today and I wanted to make sure they got in on time. So the total required was $4,886.74. The total requested was $4,602.76, and the total recommendation was $2,215.
All right, is there a motion on the table to approve the contingency? We just say as a whole, I approve $2,215 to non-USAC entities.
Okay, I motion to approve $2,215 to non-USAC.
Thank you, perfect. All right, Jamie and George. All right, we'll move into a vocal roll call beginning with IVP.
Robert said that he was having some technical difficulties, so I'm not sure if he'll be able to answer right now.
No worries. Okay, EVP?
The 2,000 kids are allowing student folks to apply to, and then the other 2,000.
Jack 2? Sorry, hold on, is there a question?
So is that like the max, or what?
More than the max.
Was there a question like that?
Oh, yeah. Nadir asked about why the recommended amount was so much less than the amount that was requested, and that was because most of them were retreats, and there's a $500 cap for retreats. So.
Great. Okay, so to continue with the vote, AAC?
Yes.
CEC? Yes. CSC?
Yes.
Back,
Yes.
FSC,
Yes.
SWC,
Yes.
TSR.
Yes.
Great, so I have 9-0, the motion passes, and $2,215 is approved of contingency programming. Thank you, Ryan. All right, seeing as there's no old business, we're gonna move into new business. First item is a FICOM bylaw change. So I know, Ryan, you talked about this a little bit last time, but would you walk us through what the change is and your reasoning behind it?
Okay, so the first one is pretty straightforward. It allows the finance committee vice chair to sign requisitions up to $500. Previously, it had been $250. This $250 amount was the amount that has been in place since 2011, when contingency was, but a fraction of what it is today. So our average allocation has gone up to roughly a little less than $500. So I think it makes sense for the vice chair to be able to sign the average allocation. So that's the reason for that one. The second one is, it's changed a little bit since the last time you all saw it. The idea is basically the same. It makes advertising in the Daily Bruin optional for funding bodies, because right now we are technically required to run, a certain size ad for so many days every quarter, which I do not believe is the most efficient use of our advertising budget. So I made it optional, but also included a line at the bottom, which would also require the funding bodies, when they're presenting new guidelines, they also need to include, a strategy on how they're going to make the information available, whether, they come and they say, we're going to use Facebook, or they are going to use Daily Bruin, because it's, still an option. That's what the second one is about.
Any questions or comments for Ryan? If not, is there a motion on the table?
I will need to agree with FICOM bylaw change.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Vocal roll call. Yeah.
No, I can.
You sure? Yeah. Okay. Vocal roll call beginning with IVP. Oh, you can't. Never mind. Okay. EVP.
Yes.
Genrec 2. AAC.
Yes.
DEC. Yes. CFC.
Yes.
FAB.
Yes.
FSC.
Yes.
SWC.
Yes.
TSR.
Yes.
Great. By a vote of 9-0, the motion passes, and the bylaw change to the Finance Committee Chair bylaws are approved. Thank you.
Sorry, who seconded the motion?
Bella.
Bella.
Yeah. George made it, Bella seconded it. Great. Okay, so the next item is just a consent item vote. So again, a reminder, I'll just ask if there's any opposition. If so, we'll move into discussion, and then we'll take an action item vote, position by position. If not, then it will just pass by consent. So this is just the contingency programming guidelines that Ryan presented last meeting, that were sent out as well. So hopefully everybody had the opportunity to review, to ask any questions or concerns that existed. So is there any opposition? Well, I'm just gonna ask the electronic ones. We give our electronic friends a second to respond. All right, then the contingency programming guidelines will pass by consent. Thank you.
Oh, I just had a quick comment.
Sure.
About the advertising issue. There's actually a line item in our administrative overhead that's like, I think it's like $12,800 and some dollars that is specifically for advertising. And it's typically very underutilized. I don't know what the remaining amount was last year, but I want to say somewhere around half. So just, for all of you to know that we can't access that, advertising if you're on Facebook, news magazines, or
Okay, the next item on the agenda was the program, we already did that. It's very similar to the last one, we just took a consent item vote for the ARCF, which is the Arts Restoring Community Fund under CAC, that Serena's fund representative presented on last meeting as well. Is there any opposition to the ARCF guidelines? Wonderful. Okay, those guidelines passed by consent and are approved for the year. PAC. And the next item, there is an item that says the agenda request changes discussion with Nadira. I'm not exactly sure what that is. So would you like to kick us off?
With what?
Agenda requests / changes.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, sure. We'll just strike it. No worries. Okay. Then the next discussion item is the discussion of the IFC lawsuit on the Allie Davidson. And again, just content warning for all of you. This does have to do with sexual assault, sexual violence, fraternities, etc. So feel free to leave your room at any time, just step out if needed. And again, remember, this is a very sensitive topic that we are handling. And some of us may have personal relationships with either the plaintiff or the defendants. So again, keep that in mind as well.
All right, so recently, Daily Room, just I believe on Monday, Daily Room article came out about a lawsuit that was filed on August 10th by a current UCLA student against the Interfraternity Council, the SAE, and ZBT fraternities, based on the student's experience with a member of the ZBT fraternity and an assault that happened, and just kind of the issue that I've got, and of course I only know as much as what's in the article on the Daily Room website, but something that really stood out for me was just the fact that the fraternities were not really taking any accountability for this, any public accountability for this. They were really doing a lot to cover it up. They had a lawyer who's affiliated with one of the fraternities kind of take over the case, is what it stated in the Daily Room article, which I just thought was just really shocking to read. But then also just kind of UCLA's very recent history with how we reacted to incidents of sexual assault and sexual harassment in the Greek life system. Specifically earlier this year, there was a ban on alcohol at parties, and I actually have a Daily Room article pulled up for that. So I think in January, there's a ban on alcohol indefinitely, and then by February, literally a month and 2 days later, Interfraternity Council lists alcohol ban on in-house events. And as we all know, alcohol is not what causes sexual assault. But just the weakness that the IFC showed in that instance and in many other instances against what is so, to me, apparently a fundamental issues in the Greek system. I just think that there has to be something that we can do to maybe put pressure on the IFC and on the fraternities, especially going into such a pivotal time of the year when there's going to be tons of new rooms coming in who may want to get involved in the Greek life system, and not saying that they necessarily shouldn't, but just to know what they're getting into. I think that these fraternities and the two specific fraternities, but also the other fraternities and the sororities that are in the Greek life system who is staying quiet while this is happening, we need to really bring it to light what's happening in this system so that the students know what they're going into, in my view, and know how this system handles student safety and as one of its values. So it's just something that I'm wondering what we can do as a council.
Absolutely, I can chime in and share all of those sentiments, and thank you for bringing this up. I've been in contact with IFC the past few days and look forward to continuing that communication, as well as bringing in analytic and officer leadership as well. And I would, hopefully in the next couple of days, they'll do something to publicly address this. If not, I think that we'll continue to put pressure on them there. But something that was really important to me, to the IFC president, who I've been in contact with extensively for the past few months about this issue, we're kind of reforming the way that trainings work in the Greek life system. And something that I want to see, and a lot of us have been talking about that, or just talking about earlier this morning, or this evening, we're making there's some sort of training for fraternity presidents, because right now there's kind of a gray area where maybe the survivor doesn't want to report to Title IX or to the police, but wants some sort of action taken against the member of the fraternity, like rightfully wants this person kicked out of the fraternity. And so then whether it's a woman in the sorority and she goes to her president, and who in turn goes to the fraternity president, it kind of falls on this, 20-year-old fraternity man to make the decision about whether or not this occurred, what course of action should be taken. And unfortunately, in more cases than not, that doesn't necessarily lead to the most optimal result. And so something that I like to see, and I would love you all support on this too, would be some sort of mandatory Title IX mandatory reporter training for fraternity presidents, similar to what we all underwent as council members, but maybe more extensively. And also just making sure that there is more programming for fraternity members. I know that all Greek life members have to go to one training at the beginning of the year, but IFC is actually instituting a few new member forums in addition to just the one. I think they're going to do like 4 throughout fall quarter. But I would really like to see the effectiveness of those and whether or not those really do reach the new members, really how they're going to be carried out. But I think that is a step in the right direction. So I guess that's any insight that can help all of you. But I really think that we need to start with the leadership of these organizations. We can even extend it to their entire executive boards, whatever is possible. Let you know what Offsol says once I meet with them. But I really think that it shouldn't fall on a 20-year-old person who's friends with the perpetrator, whatever that is, to make the decision of whether or not to kick somebody out from fraternity. It should be something that they feel comfortable going to Title IX or going to Offsol or the advisors about, if that makes sense. Did you have too much time in there?
Yeah, so, okay, in terms of the person who's been like sexually, accused of sexual assault, who's actually expelled from the university as well. And they also do have like that, they also do have to go through a training for members of the organizations that for members that like in the beginning of fall quarter. So I think when it comes down to the instituting new members, so every fraternity and sorority like have like a new rush or whatever, and I think like, and also like for their Greek organizations, they report like the new member names, and I feel like it's appropriate that they would have like Title IX like training like at the induction of like new members, because the new members perhaps don't even get Title IX training until, unless they're like virtually like the standard like UCLA student, they don't really get into the next year in the fall when they probably would only have like maybe a year left of membership or maybe 2-3 years of membership. So it's just really that's like part of their inclusion on this campus.
Kind of to add on to what Claire was talking about of like the programming, at least for like speaking candidly of what like fraternities and sororities had to go to, that training was like an absolute joke. They pretty much, it was this gentleman who pretty much talked about toxic masculinity and how it was like okay for guys to cry and like have feelings, and I'm not sure what he was trying to deconstruct, but if USAC could have any hand in maybe like vetting who's speaking or like a plan of action or like just making sure that these people like aren't talking out of their ass, because like this was the one kind of mandatory thing that anyone had to listen to, and it didn't even address women or like pinpoint anything. If we as like kind of the governing voice of the undergraduates kind of take more responsibility to making sure that they're like, dotting their T's and crossing their I's. At least that could be like a potential like hand we could have in it, if nothing else is at least we would be able to say like we tried to make sure that there was something of substance being said. That could be a start.
Going off of that, and like maybe not even setting the person who's speaking, but we could put forward like a list of expectations we have of what needs to be included in those trainings. So like, for the president, some sort of like talk about like crisis intervention type stuff, and like, you know, we could talk about that at like the next meeting if we wanted to, about what types of stuff we would expect from those trainings. Because I agree, like I've seen some sexual assault trainings that like aren't, like they're great if you are already open to hearing it, you already kind of know what the behavior looks like, but then don't necessarily like break through people that it needs to be addressing the most. Yeah.
A lot of what I want to see, again, this is like going back to my platform that I keep talking about, but a lot of what I would like to see, and I hope that you are welcome to help bring this vision to light, is trainings that aren't this outside person that like nobody really has any connection to or reason to listen to, and are instead peer-led. My chapter did an event with SIGAP, where like a bunch of members of my chapter and a bunch of members of SIGAP just had a conversation, and it was facilitated by representatives from CARE. And I unfortunately wasn't able to attend because it was an optional event. But I heard from members of my chapter that it was really, really effective to actually have a conversation, and it made a space that was less, I guess, like high impact for members to kind of like ask questions, and for maybe members of the fraternities to bring up some beliefs that they've seen or to maybe correct some of their misconceptions. And so I know CAPA does a similar thing with CBT every year. That's just a couple examples. But I think that smaller peer-led trainings are so much more effective than packing everyone to Polly and doing a presentation. You know, I would love to see the IFC president like getting up there and saying, listen, I'm your peer, I'm your friend, and I'm not okay with this. And this is what I think we need to do. And like, let's lose the standard. You know, I think my experience with Panhellenic is that we do a pretty good job of having those conversations. Like BCC's been in present to my chapter a few times, and it's something that I think that we're really transparent about, but I'm not sure if all chapters have the same experience, or if fraternities have the experience of their leadership saying, you can talk to us, let's have a conversation, let's be open, let's dispel misconceptions, you know? And so if there's any way that maybe we can work on getting BCC CARE, these great organizations that exist, on board, instead of bringing in some random outside presenter, I would really love to see that. And I will bring that again, I'm gonna bring that to IFC and Panhellenic. I know it's not an easy fix right away, but if any of you have, you know, members of your chapter, or friends that are presidents, to encourage them to have events like that, I really think are effective. Yeah.
I also think that when discussing this, we should also put pressure on IFC or whoever, so that the presidents of these chapters go through more extensive training, similar to like more in depth than even the one that we went to. Because if you think about like similar, I'm guessing similar to like RA training, where they go over crisis management and counseling in whatever regards, because at least with fraternities and sororities, there are students who live in these, in the respective chapters and houses, and if the person who is supposed to be responding and the head of that fraternity or organization does not know or is not fully equipped with the resources or knowledge as to how to handle a difficult situation, you're just setting people up for failure and for tragedy to happen. So I think they should go through even more extensive training that deals specifically with crisis management and knowing how to approach emergencies like these.
Who facilitates that training for RAs? Like Brad's Life.
Yeah, but if you want, we can contact them in the past. I know that for our position is actually Dr. Geller, who went like from New Student Advisors, Dr. Geller facilitated that conversation. It was a longer conversation than the one she gave here.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, there's also different like trainings that they do, but like maybe one that's longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any kind of training during rush, during actual? No, but I mean that's.
That more so is like why you want to be a part of our like organization, and like what do you know about an organization? What do you have to bring to the table? Have you met so and so?
Yeah, I just think that like if you're telling them about going on about everything about what's happening on campus, and
there's definitely opportunity for that to happen. There's
like presentations and like a variety of different like workshops with that data.
And not saying that I want to like drag, like I want to drag with money, because obviously through like there's like a lot of advocates as well, but like I do think that if we want to be serious about making people care about consent and respect it, then it needs to start like from when they enter Greek life. And it's something where like we're like, let's see what the IFC does and see how that works out. This isn't an issue that like I feel comfortable seeing how it works out, but it is one that's so sensitive. So I want to try to be as strong as we can about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for ISC, but every woman going through panoramic recruitment has to attend this like orientation where they just kind of tell you about what recruitment entails. I don't see why they couldn't put something in there about, you know, it's week one. They talk to you about like blackout and whatnot. They talk to you about like what you're not supposed to be doing and like whatnot. So I don't know why they couldn't talk briefly about, you know, while you're here, while you're in recruitment, mixed in that, especially for the fraternities, because their rush process is so informal, that I don't know how much oversight there necessarily is, whereas with the it's so structured, that I'm sure like even conversations within rush, there could be a way to.
Yeah, and if the fraternity presidents are, I mean, it would be difficult to have them go through the title training for rush, but if that can happen, or someone who can come in and train and speak at each of the houses, like as a part of rush. I mean, they just need to take it more serious.
I don't know if this is us like inserting ourselves too much, but I feel like at this point it's kind of become an epidemic where someone needs to insert themselves in this situation. I'm the external social chair of my sorority, so pretty much in charge of like who we do events with. And when these sexual assault allegations come about, I decide, or like me and my committee decide to, you know, kind of boycott the house that's even in question. A lot of other sororities kind of like, oh, it's a gray area, I don't know if we want to like boycott it, and these boycotts are just, at least from what I've seen, very effective in making the fraternity take action. I don't know if there's anything that we as a council can kind of do to like support the sororities that have like taken it upon themselves to go about boycotting, or support the like a fraternity president in taking action that would be like unfavorable, like that kind of peer support. I don't know. George?
I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this documentary before, but it's called The Hunting Ground. And SWC and CEC have excluded in the past, and a lot of the times we've like encouraged Greek life to attend, and a lot of the times they don't. I was wondering if we could maybe suggest IFC that they have some sort of mandatory screening of a documentary of this sort. For those of you that don't know, it's basically a documentary that addresses how universities have addressed sexual assault in the past and currently. But yeah, something like that maybe we could do. It's on Netflix. I mean, I know you need to get like screen rights and everything, but for any of you that want to watch it, it's pretty good.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I believe it was my sophomore year, they showed clips from that in our training, but they like the way that they showed the clips was kind of strange, and so they like selectively showed the part about SAE, sexual assault inspected, and so like the SAEs were really upset it just like caused some controversy. But I think that like if there was a way to not just selectively edit clips here and there, and I agree it's an extremely powerful documentary, I feel like maybe folks would pay more attention to something like that.
I like to what Bella said, like I was going to focus more on, and I also think that's a really great idea. CC students got on the ground last spring, and we had the director there to speak, and the woman who was in the film. And not that we didn't get a great turnout, but it was also fun. But we'll probably screen it again or something else in the content, because it's obviously really relevant to it. But to what Bella said, I think maybe focusing instead on just supporting like a more positive environment and a safer environment and consent instead of like really just like, I don't know, like, I love the idea of a boycott because I love the solidarity behind that. So like a solidarity movement like that without like doing something that like, because what I tend to see, I don't know, I'm kind of a Facebook comment troll, like I love reading them. And like you always find that one like old, like, washed up frat guy who's like, how dare they come for my frat like this? It's like, I feel like sometimes like the frats get really upset and like, not that we don't, I mean, what certain members have done is really awful, so that you should be bringing that to light. But I think that like, by just making it like a negative interaction, not a ton of change comes from that. It doesn't open up things well to conversation. Like, people aren't going to want to communicate when you're just like shaming the entire frat, and it just makes people really defensive. So I would have said, if we're doing like a sort of solidarity and just focusing on the solidarity and that, and focusing a lot on consent, like I think that just makes really.
Did you have any, Rob? Okay. So I actually have like, it's Sigma Alpha Epsilon, that, one of them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I think we should do is I think we should definitely engage in discourse. I also think that since you're in communication with IFC, since maybe their board or perhaps we should probably like invite council members so that we can like all collaborate in terms of ideas. But I do think that although we're advocating for like some form of like training during their rush week and things like that, that there comes to a point where we might have to condemn them vocally via statement for the action that they have. Because at the end of the day, all it does is really taint the integrity of their organization to have members behaving in such a way. And even though it may seem as if we're coming for the organization, it's because you integrated them, or perpetrators rather, have been integrated into the space as opposed to distancing themselves and acknowledging that this person and what they've come to do doesn't represent the ideas and values and principles of your such fraternity. And so I think that as council members, we should like really strongly consider that, because this is also the same kind of instances that have happened with annually. There's actually like some type of issue going on with the fraternity here on campus. And I don't think that it's enough to institute or recommend trainings just because they do get that. Like before they can become a Greek organization, before they use that, but if you're a member, I think you get that. And I think that it's important to do it in Rush, and we can definitely collaborate on ideas and figure out like, because again, each organization has their own constitutions and ways and policies of conducting themselves, but I think that we should be firm and being prepared to present a statement, disassociating ourselves and making sure that we condemn that those activities are not okay and that they as an organization shouldn't allow those things to happen or continue to happen.
I think you're focusing on fraternities, and I think that's clearly a subculture of the UCLA population. I think sexual assault and risk is prevalent in many different groups, and so I think it's important to look at IFC and how you can kind of impact change. Some of the things that I've seen to be really the most impactful is this is Bruin Life, and how they have, the chancellor has made statements about sexual assault making a difference. If you've been to the presentations, they will talk about the hurt and wrongs that people experience around their identities and the way they've been marginalized or compromised. And part of the message is, and we are better than this as Bruins, and let's strive as a whole community to make a difference. And I think that's a really phenomenal platform for you and USAC to kind of look at, to try to put a stake in the ground and saying, bad things happen, and yet we stand for something better and higher, and we want to make a difference. So absolutely, the focus is on IFC currently right now. It is broader than that, and there is some research that looking at like the first 100 days of college is when people are most vulnerable. Maybe, the first week is a little overwhelming, everything that's going on. And so maybe it's not the first thing out of the gate, maybe it's the second, but I think there are many touch points for you to kind of get creative and thoughtful about.
So I guess a number of things. One, this is absolutely like a very safe issue, and in addition to Bruin, students are also receiving training at orientation. And today there was a panel discussion where there was a survivor, and so she was sharing her story. So students are hearing about it. Second, because of that, it's also on the minds of parents and students, and they're drawing links And yes, like at the last time orientation, like there seems to be an influx of questions surrounding IFC specifically and sexual assault. So I think there's definitely something there that needs to be addressed. Also, I think that we need to, whatever we come up with, we need to come up with something because there's a state, like a statement should be made, and I think it was very powerful for us to make that. I think also, I think what Jamie said, maybe drafting a list of demands would be very useful. And then in that, I guess what I would say is to make the distinction between trainings that general members should go to, right? That they should be attending trainings about consent, but then I'm gonna keep pushing for like more in-depth training for those presidents because I think like they are living with these students, right? And they should be trained to how to handle crises because they do have an energy, like just for, you know, X job, you go through a certain hour of trainings to, you know, to be equipped, and it seems kind of irrational that someone who is going to be living, you know, who has so much power, who is backed by such a large institution that has not, you know, acted with the full scope of its power, like, you know, they should know what to do, and so I think we should demand, like, you know, that as well. Trainings for the general members, but then also that the presidents be trained on how to handle crises.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a quick remark about that SOC is connected to the This Is True Live producers, and they're more than happy to. Well, at least they expressed to us that they're more than happy to stream a video to pretty much anyone they want to get out there. So yeah.
So do you mean like what video?
They have a video. They have a video that they show. It's
Okay.
just it's yeah. And they pooled like 8 students or something like that, 8 students, and they did some sort of, it was a long time ago that I watched this, but they did some sort of like multi-week program where they had students just discuss, and they filmed it, and it's like a really, really well-made like documentary. It's really good. And it's of UCLA students, like in the documentary.
Are they like just on their screen or I don't even publicize that?
So kind of in the same way that we have like special presentations from different student orgs, I think that it would be beneficial if we kind of have the same thing with IFC and kind of in the manner that we obviously don't have any jurisdiction on who frat presidents are, but if we could like frame it as like USAC wants to get to know like the IFC presidents, like presidents come get to know us and kind of like a Q&A discussion. We can throw some ideas on the table. The percentage of people in Greek life is 26% from what I'm seeing here, and we all got elected by 20-ish% of the student body. So the governing boards, I feel like, are kind of should be the same type of like magnitude of, you know, relationship. We can bring in the frat presidents, get to know them on a sort of personal basis, sororities, see what their plans are, give suggestions, kind of know them more as than just like a name that will come up in a room.
Can we talk to them? I'm sure if you were such a
Gotcha. I'm so sorry to talk about it, but also think one thing that we do have control is how we frame this and how we phrase it as well. While I do think it's like important not to, you know, maybe specifically pin everything on IFC or make it seem like they're, you know, the perpetrators only exist in IFC. I do think that one, like IFC in comparison to say just a random UCLA student, the random UCLA student does not have, or maybe the average UCLA student might not have a team of lawyers, backing them up, or a full-on institution with the same amount of money or power or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's also important to recognize that, like, that it's not just individuals within, you know, frats or, you know, whatever. It's also like a larger organization that oversees them and that has so much power. And so when we put in that perspective, like, I would be okay with, you know, at least very explicitly saying when this, right, at least in this moment, it seems to be IFC who is dealing with this, and as a result, we are going to address it and not be afraid to use the word fraternity in every statement that we release. I think that releasing any sort of general statement is just gonna like fall flat, like realistically. And I don't mean to like seem mean or anything, but it's just like, just last week, another administrator said like, don't tell like, so don't allow students to make, correlations between IS and sexual assault. And I think that when we have comments like that made by administrators, it kind of belittles the actual issue that is taking place. Because we're not just dealing with individuals, we're with large institutions. So.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you just said. I think that we need to be very direct in the statement that we made, and I think that we should show a lot of solidarity with the survivor and her case. Especially when you're just reading the Daily Green article. It's just kind of shocking. It happened in 2016, and the student wasn't expelled until 2017, late 2017, I believe. But the fraternity president knew about it for most of that time, and so there just seems to be a disconnect in that situation there. But then, yeah, that these are like huge, very wealthy institutions, and so that's a lot for one survivor to go up against. And so I would just really want to show the solidarity there.
I think, honestly, when you say solidarity, I feel like we can just send out our statement. We don't have to wait for them to decide if they want to meet with us.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, we could just do a statement of solidarity, like as a council, and be like, you know what, we saw this situation.
So this is like multi-pronged. I think we should send out a statement. I think we should have mobilized efforts to do consent trainings and have a presence, or not us as the presence, but have a presence of like something that we're doing within the fraternities and sororities during Rush. And I think that, potentially working with the IFC to kind of engage with them, potentially at council. No, I don't think that we should wait. I think that it should be a pretty swift action that we take, because this is really relevant. I think students are, if you look at the comments, again, I'm gonna take it back here. If you look at the comments, students are really outraged by this, and they're calling out their friends who are friends with this person. It's such a major issue on our campus. It has been such a major issue. And there's been USAC resolutions in the past that have kind of fallen flat, haven't done much. So I think that this should be a really kind of full-on approach to show our solidarity, B, our real commitment to making a difference.
It should be like something kind of pointed, not just in words, but like USAC has our eye on you, and we're gonna like ensure that. Obviously we hope this is the last, but the last that we haven't had our hands like deep in this situation. Like we are fully fledged putting ourselves in there. So yeah, I feel like we could at least maybe like Google Docs or drafting ideas.
Yeah, so I was just gonna ask, do we want to make this like a resolution? Do you want it to be like a letter, like what, like that we all sign on to as individuals? Or like
I think
what format do we want to go with this?
Yeah,
I think both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Resolutions just take longer is the thing.
Yeah.
We have to wait till next meeting, but.
We can do the letter now and then have a resolution.
Yeah, sure. I'll maybe do it longer.
Dude, I got y'all. It's a little word.
The one thing that I'll add, the word which goes, is that just,
That was my question,
Sure.
was when we're reading this statement, like, how we got anyone that mentioned it.
The one thing I'll just add though is, having spoken with a close friend of the survivor, she did not ask for this media attention. She did not know the Daily Green was gonna report on this. They didn't let her know they were gonna do it. And she's really having a hard time with all of this without her really talking about it. So when we do this statement, I don't wanna make it super, super general, but just be careful about referencing this specific incident, for her sake. And unfortunately, the individual is no longer on this campus, and the folks that were complicit in this act have graduated now, right? The past IFC president, the past USAC president are not on campus anymore. So we just have to make sure that it is a condemnation of the event, but we are being very intentional about, who we want to bring into, and maybe not necessarily trying to come after the current CBG president or current IFC president. We'll also hold them accountable, but not you know what I mean? Does that make sense? But yeah, just taking into account the difficulty, I guess, of doing something like this.
In this doc, we could also pull like the kind of actions we want to start moving towards, just so we don't just.
Yeah, I feel like we have kind of the.
Yeah, I can take it.
Sure. Let's see. Are you starting it? Because I don't have to start if you're writing it.
Yeah, I have it in my Google Doc. I can start it right now. Yeah, I'm just sharing you all on your USAC email, so that's okay. Do you want your Gmails or like the ASUCLA at UCLA, like you want? Gmail, okay. So, is yours general to a Gmail? So you like
Let's see. Also, we're substitute.
I have yours. Okay, I just added everyone else, and I'll add everybody else as well.
If anyone has like connections to like BCC or like sorority presidents that like want a hand in like molding the language or has like a better take on that, invite them to.
Yeah. Do you have the BCC email? Can you copy them onto it?
BCC.
And aren't you
Yeah.
moving with her?
Yeah, for vacation, but yeah, I can text her.
That's really complete.
Yes. Yeah, she's at home right now, but she also can say. Okay, I'll share the rest of the council members. Yeah. Your picture is still Aaron. Your picture is still Aaron?
Oh.
I changed my name so long ago and happy
Still saying
Rocky. I've had like someone sent me a screenshot where it showed up as Rocky. I'm like, that's a lot.
Mine's already on for a while. I want to change it finally, but.
I was seeing Dan for a few emails, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
People are saying Ariel.
I was seeing Ariel too.
Wow, well, it goes.
Kayla never like unsubscribed like the thing she like served, and so I get emailed like internship opportunity.
Chloe still had her Amazon account hooked up to the Gmail. I was like,
We get all that to us. Okay, well, it looks like that will conclude the discussion for now, unless there's any last parting thoughts. But let's please continue working on some sort of statement. Okay. I believe that that's the last item on the agenda. So unless anybody else has any parting thoughts, announcements, yeah,
just really quick, because that Jay, you just reminded me of the photo thing. If anybody has not sent me your final selection for your headshot, please send me that ASAP, because we're going to work on the new display that goes in Ackerman and Kirkhoff. And I think since we're still missing a couple people, we may just put up the display with names only, and then once we have all the photos, we'll redo it with all the photos. But yeah, if you haven't made your final selection yet, let me know what it is.
email the photos?
Yeah, so I emailed the screenshot of all the thumbnail photos, and then if you can select like your top 3, I will send you full size of those, and then you can pick which one you want from that.
Could you resend it to me? Because I just
Yeah, if you don't have it, just email me and I can forward it to you.
Wonderful. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 10:02 p.m. If Ryan would pass the information, wonderful. And we'll move into good and welfare. So do our virtual friends want to start